Greetings. Today I was planning on using a few computers to test the suitability of this action television set for displaying computer graphics or computer video. This had a cameo appearance in our last episode where we hooked it up to a Commodore 64C. And we ran a game on it, and it worked fine. Now, when you're running graphics or games, the resolution doesn't have to be super high. You can still see what's going on generally. Also, this is black and white, but it was sufficient to see the display, and we were able to play the game. So fast forward to today, I figured, okay, let's see what happens if we want to use this as a computer monitor. Now, the first thing I pulled out was this TRS-80 Model 1. I made a video cable for it. It's rather than being an AV cable, it's a V cable, because there is really no dedicated sound channel coming out of this. I mean, you can use a cassette port to make bleeps and blops. Well, people have actually done, 1-bit digitization of speech and stuff on it, but the cable I made, I just want to see what the video looks like. Also, in the last episode, we did diagnose and fix a sound problem we had, not in this monitor, but in a Sony monitor. But then when we hooked it up to this, we basically got sound and video, and it was playable. So as I said, I've pulled out the TRS-80, hooked it up through the video cable. It has to go through an RF modulator because this is composite video coming out of here. And this TV only accepts RF on channel 3 or 4. So it's all hooked up. And when we try to run it, nothing happens. We get a blank screen. There's no noise on the screen, or not a whole lot of noise. And but there's no video coming out of here. So, of course, my plans change at that point, and the priority shifted towards getting this guy, figuring out what's wrong with him, of course, and fixing him. And then finally we can get to displaying some text on the screen and see how it does. Now, this kind of stuff does happen when you have a lot of equipment that doesn't get used on a weekly, monthly, or even yearly basis. It's old equipment, it worked at some time, but sometimes things fail. And because of that, since this guy failed, instead of using my normal scope, I decided to use this scope, which has been sitting on the shelf unused for quite some time. Now, the danger with this is that this video can kind of spiral out of proportion, because what if this doesn't work? Well, I guess then the whole theme changes and we got to tear this apart to fix it, and on and on and on. So, well, let's hope it works. Lights are there. Which is a good sign. I will put in a link to a video I made when I fixed this, because it was a victim of the bad Taiwanese capacitors. A large number of them used on the board had leaked and rendered it useless, but looks like we're back in business. Yes, it passed the test. and we're ready to start troubleshooting the TRS-80. Most of the TRS-80s I've seen that were not functionally sound look different than this. When you turn them on, the screen is filled with random characters. And what that means is that the video circuitry on the TRS-80 is mostly autonomous. I say mostly because obviously something has to write data into its display buffers, but other than that, it runs independent of the CPU circuitry. So what happens if anything, you have bad ROMs, the CPU doesn't come up, or anything like that, you will get a screen filled with a random array of characters, which means that, hey, the video circuitry is running, but the CPU is not. Well, in this case, we have a blank screen, and that is kind of odd because, well, it does indicate that the video circuitry is not running. If the video runs, it'll put up a sign-on message. I mean, if everything works, it'll put up a sign-on message that comes from the CPU. There is nothing on the screen at all, so at this point, it's kind of irrelevant whether the CPU is running or not. But we definitely know that the video circuitry is not running. Now, in order to look into this, I have put the pertinent part of the schematics up. That's kind of the end of the line of where the video is generated. And we got clocks coming into this block over here that generates the sync signals. These signals come from divide down, from the master clock being divided down, so processor has nothing to do with that. And we will measure and see, after all of this stuff, we have a horizontal sync and a vertical sync that gets combined here, generating a composite sync. And it is conveniently labeled as sync, and it goes to the base of Q2, runs through a resistor. This is basically a summing junction here, and jumping ahead of myself, the video comes through here. Video and sync get mixed here, drive the base of Q1, and that goes to the DIN output. So this should be video. So we will be probing those signals, and I won't be flipping back and forth between the schematics and the probing thing, but you can always come back and look at the schematic for reference if you need it. But I will, of course, tell you what signals are being measured. Convenient way to check all of the regulated voltages on this board is to measure what is going to one of the DRAMs, because they use all of the regulated voltages. So we pick one of the DRAMs, which are the socketed parts over here. We start with pin 1, that is -5. Pin 8, which is 12. Pin 9, which is 5, and pin 16, which is ground. So it looks like the board has all of the correct voltages, and I'm not even going to bother with checking the CPU just yet, but we're going to check those signals we just discussed while looking at the schematics. Okay, let's see and check for horizontal sync. The horizontal sync is on Z5, pin 10. So, where is Z5? It's right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. and if the probe doesn't keep sliding off. Okay, so the auto function on the scope is actually quite useful, and we can see the horizontal sync pulses. And if we look on the right, the frequency is approximately 15.8 kilohertz, so that's good. So we do have horizontal pulses being generated. That's of course before those pulses are combined further down the line. But if we move to pin 9, and again press the auto on the scope, it adjusts itself and tells us and shows us the vertical pulses, the vertical retrace pulses, at a frequency of about 60 hertz. And that is correct too. That's how it retraces. Now, pin 8 of Z5 basically NANDs those two signals together to create a composite sync pulse. And that is, it's kind of hard that the scope can't really sync to that, because you got your horizontal pulses and then they're interrupted by the vertical pulses. So even hitting the auto set on the scope doesn't really do a whole lot. It's actually, see, it's grabbing a section of the pulse train, which in this case are the horizontal sync pulses, and showing us that. So in order to see the composite signal better, I'm going to go and sync the scope back to the vertical pulses, because then it'll give us this display, which is the composite sync signal, and that'll become significant a little later. So we're good on the sync signals, which when we looked at the TV screen, it was basically blank with nothing weird happening, no tearing, no big amounts of noise or anything. So that's not a big surprise. But now let's have a look at the video signal itself, which seems to be absent. So if we go to Z30 pin 2, that is, that's where the character bitmaps come out from, or the character data, and that's obviously dead. Now, pin 3, this is a NAND gate, by the way. Now, on pin 3, we do see some activity on it, but if we auto set it, let's see, is there anything periodic on here? It sits there, the scope's not really. We get the same thing, and that is not a complete video signal. Or is it? See, right now, all we do, actually it is a complete video signal, because all the computer is saying right now is, it comes up with a prompt that says mem size, ? So you have 7, 8 characters, and I guess that's what we're looking at, but they're, as far as the scope is concerned, they're not non-periodic. It can't trigger on those. But if we hit enter, we see the pattern change a little bit. We're getting more of those spikes in there. And that's because there's more data on the screen now. Once you hit enter, it identifies itself with Radio Shack level 2 basic, blah, 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 ready, and a prompt. So this kind of tells us that right things seem to be happening. The processor seems to be responsive. But let's follow the signal down and see if the video is getting properly mixed with the sync signals. Now the video goes into pin 6, of Z41, which is a 75452. It's basically a driver transistor driven by an AND gate. But in this case, the video signal going in is connected to both inputs on the AND gate. So it's just being used as a transistor right now. And pin 7 pretty much shows us the video signal is getting to pin 7 and to pin 6. I mean, they're tied together. Now, the output of that comes out of pin 5. And if we go to pin 5, we see a pattern that should look familiar to you. When I first stared at it, I didn't get it either. But what we are looking at over here, this is a composite sync signal. Well, how is that getting there? Well, remember we had a summing junction in the output circuitry where the sync signals were added to the video signals through 2 resistors and then fed the base of the final output transistor. Well, if we're seeing the sync signal on the output of the amplified video signal, that probably means that the guy we're probing, that the transistor in there has gone bad. And because it's connected to the composite sync signal through 2 resistors, that's what we're seeing. So this guy must be dead, and we're just having the sync signal bleed through here. But that means on the output, on the final output of everything, which is the emitter of transistor Q1, which is here, and look, we're seeing our old favorite again. We're seeing composite sync, but we're not seeing any video writing on it. Thus, this chip, Z41, the video signal amplifier, has a problem with its output. So from our analysis, everything seems to be pointing at this chip, which is Z41, a 75452 driver that has an AND gate in the front end. So you could theoretically have 2 signals going in and having them ANDed, but that's not even being used. They're running both signals into an AND gate, which basically turns that AND gate into just a non-inverting buffer. So again, my guess is that the output transistor in it has gone bad. But before going in and starting removing this chip, I mean, these boards are not of the highest quality. And even using a desoldering gun will leave you holding a few pads in your hand. If there's any unconnected pads like on the underneath, the desoldering gun, I mean, it's got to be turned up to properly melt the solder, but it can, on these kinds of boards, and I've worked on a lot of these TRS-80s, can create a mess. So first of all, replacing the chip, I'm not even going to try to desolder it. I'm going to cut the pins and then clear the holes one by one, just with a handheld soldering iron. But before that, there is a test we can perform that could or could not prove my theory. It's not a very clean test, but I'm going to do it anyway, because if it works, it'll give us a clear answer of whether we have the problem identified. What we are going to do is turn off the computer, go to my parts store, and get a replacement chip here, slightly bend the pins inward, and then place it on the bad chip. And making sure, or as sure we can be, that it's touching all of the pins. And now, I mean, we could still stick the scope on it and all of that, but if my theory is correct, we should get something on the screen. Now, of course, how readable that is was the original subject of this video, so if anything comes up, I don't know if we're going to be able to read it, but it should at least be an indication that the TRS-80 is back in business. So here we go, 3, 2, 1, go. I don't know how well you can see it, but it is saying mem size. R/S L2 basic ready, and a prompt with an underscore. Now, well, I guess it looks like we fixed it. Not really. If I wasn't very, or let's say I was even lazier than I really am, I could probably just put some hot glue on the piggyback chip and call it good. But I'm not going to do that because at this point I don't know how much electrical contention is between the defective chip and the new one I put in, and it may only last for a very short time. But I'm kidding even suggesting this. Of course, I'm going to have to go in and cut out, well, replace the chip with a socket and put a new chip in there. So we're just going to go in and cut the pins as close as possible to the body of the bad chip. Of course, making sure that power is turned off. And the side cutters don't want to go in. There you go. That satisfying click. But yeah, I'm not going to bore you with this for much further. We're going to cut all the legs, take the leg remains out, heat the joint, take the leg remains out, clear the holes, blah, 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 and we'll be back in a jiffy. And I can now proudly proclaim that no traces were hurt in the filming of this video over here. Everything's clean, and socket fits in nicely. Here are the leftovers and all the legs that came out cleanly. And this is probably the best way to work with a PCB that is not necessarily of the highest quality. But let's solder this guy in, put a new chip in, and check the final results. And for those of you curious, let's see what the fixed video signal looks like. It is still working, as we can see. And of course, here's the new guy. And we probe pin 5. Well, actually, that is not the final video signal. The final video signal is on Q1, the emitter, which is over here. Let's see. And let's see if it'll auto trigger on it. Well, yes, it will. So this is pretty much showing us the whole video signal. Let's go back to this one. We can see the vertical retrace. And then we can see the actual video coming out. But I can't, well, yeah, I could play with the trigger point, but ooh, I almost had a stable display there. But yeah, as you can see, it works now. So let's put it back together. Okay, it's all back together again. Well, there's the screen. How readable is it? Yeah. You be the judge. It's readable, but you probably don't want to program on this. Looking at this, I mean, it is perfectly readable. It's smart. It's small. There's some interference. But it does work. So there she is in all her beauty. And for our last test, we'll use a Commodore VIC-20 because it I don't even remember, but it's how many characters across it shows, but it's definitely less than the 64 the TRS-80 shows. So let's see how readable this is. And it takes a while to boot because it's got the memory expansion, and there you go. It is much more readable. Let's see, how many characters are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. Is that right? 22 or 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yes. It's 22 characters across. And it is readable. You could write a spreadsheet on it. You could write a new web browser on it. So this could be kind of useful. The only thing that bugs me is that when using it with composite outputs, you need you need this RF modulator. And that's hanging out. Maybe there's a way I can install this inside the battery compartment, because this would make a really good field test instrument if you're making a house call, troubleshooting somebody's setup, computer setup or so, and they don't happen to have a working monitor. This is probably the easiest way to get a transportable monitor. But seriously, you know, it's a conversation piece. It's really cool, but I think that's about as far as it goes. Well, thanks for watching. If you want to see more videos, then leave me a like and click all the other good stuff, and we'll see you soon.